Now that you've understood the 6 performance mandates and the human needs, let's understand limits of acceptability. Limits of acceptability is that range wherein the human needs are met. The physiological, psychological, sociological, and economic needs are met. Let me give you an example to explain this. In the room that you're seated right now, you might be feeling either too cold or too hot or perfectly fine. This graph explains that. The air temperature indicated here is high and here is low. Person dissatisfied is the percentage of people that are dissatisfied with this particular condition. Wherein you see that when the air temperature is too high, the person dissatisfied is also 100%. And when the air temperature is too low, the person dissatisfied is also very high. The person dissatisfied is lowest where the air temperature is in the medium range. We are comfortable in this region, in this medium range. This is our comfort zone. So this range or these limits is called the limit of acceptability. This limit or this range of temperature is acceptable to the occupants. Let's look at another example of indoor air pollutants. When the air pollutants are too high, it's not acceptable and the people are dissatisfied. 100% are dissatisfied. While when the indoor air pollutants are low, it is in that range when the occupants are comfortable. It's their comfort zone. That's why the person dissatisfied is lowest when the indoor air pollutants is lowest. So that is the limit of acceptability. This comfort zone is the limit of acceptability. Let's look at 2 more examples explaining the acoustic and the visual performance. When the sound pressure level is very high, person dissatisfied is 100%, while person dissatisfied is lowest at a low sound pressure level. Lighting. When the lighting is too bright, also it's uncomfortable, right? So that is why the person dissatisfied is 100% when the illumination is too high. While when the lighting is too dim, also the person dissatisfied is 100%. We are comfortable or the comfort zone lies in this range, in the medium range. This is the acceptable range or the limit of acceptability. Now, how do we quantify this range, this limit of acceptability? So, Singapore has come up with standards with different nomenclature. For example, SS, which stands for Singapore Standard 553 2016, which is updated in 2016, has a requirement or has quoted a regulation wherein the air temperature should be or is a requirement for the air temperature to be between 23 to 25 degrees Celsius. The relative humidity should be lesser than 65% for new buildings and lesser than 70% for existing buildings. Now, Singapore has come up with these different codes for different performance criteria. This is one example that is given to you. And this limit of acceptability changes depending on the type of building, depending on the type of function or the occupancy concerned. So in every chapter of total building performance, we would go through the various performance criteria, the different limits of acceptability, and we would understand the different standards by the quoted by the Singapore standards. And we would understand the limit of acceptability for each performance mandate. Now, now that we have covered all these different criteria, the needs, and also the understand what exactly is limit of acceptability, let's understand how do we evaluate, how do we understand whether the building is performing, and how it needs to be evaluated. So there are different terms for this evaluation: suitability, reliability, and flexibility. A building is termed suitable when all the performance mandates are met, when all the requirements are met. So it's a measure of the degree to which a building and its components serve needs in the present and near future. Means at the moment, currently, of this particular building or this particular space fulfills all the requirement, it is deemed suitable. How about in the long run? The probability that the service will continue to perform as intended throughout the life of the facility, given appropriate maintenance and use. In the long term, if the same facility or the same development or space functions appropriately, it's deemed reliable. So, once the space is suitable, we have to ensure it is also reliable. A space also needs to be flexible. Flexible is the measure of the systems or the ability to accommodate or change functions and occupancies. For example, your convention hall where you all would go for graduation is a huge function hall. During your convention, the stairs, which are foldable, would be unfolded, and it would be converted into an auditorium space. If there is no requirement for an event, the stairs are folded back and it becomes a huge event hall. So this space is adaptable to two different functions. It is a flexible space. So we are looking at these uh, these terms of we are looking at evaluating a space in these terms, that it should be suitable, reliable, and flexible. Now, how do we measure? What are the units of these evaluation? We looked at the example given here in SS 553, where the air temperature, the limit of acceptability was between 23 to 25. Degrees Celsius is the unit of evaluation. Similarly, we would be looking at the different units of evaluation for the different performance mandates like ppm, dB, lux, etc. ppm would be to measure or to evaluate the indoor air pollutants. dB would be the sound levels, would be the unit of evaluation for the sound level. Lux would be the unit of evaluation for brightness. Now, once you know how to evaluate a building, we need to understand how is it quantified. What are the different measurement approaches, the diagnostic measurement approaches? Any space can be evaluated or can be measured by referring to its plans or archive analysis. Plans, specifications, and photographs. These are documented drawings or technical specifications of the equipments that are used in the building, or just photographical evidence of existing building design. These documents help us to measure or evaluate the building's performance. The building's budget or implementation history would would help in evaluating the economic needs or the economic performance or the energy performance, energy consumption, existing energy bills, or the different energy conservation implementation policies, All different types of documentation, when studied, would help us to measure the building's performance. The other way of measurement approach is the occupancy or user analysis. For example, to understand the indoor air quality, it is a requirement by the Green Mark or by the government to have an indoor air quality audit once every 3 years, in which there is also a occupant survey done, wherein there is a different question, there is a set of questionnaire which the occupants need to answer. It's like a feedback survey form, wherein the indoor air quality is assessed and the occupants feedback. You as students also have a lot of feedback and surveys to do on, for example, how is the education system, how is your learning. With this feedback, the performance of the particular institute is measured. Similarly, the building's performance can be measured through interviews of the occupants or even behavioral mapping. How many people in a residential unit use the community spaces, use the parks, the communal parks? By doing a behavioral mapping, we would know how efficient is the space planning. These are few examples that I just quoted, wherein the building's performance can be assessed, can be evaluated. There are different ways through walkthrough analysis. What is walkthrough analysis? For example, you are going to buy a residential unit. We wouldn't assess the property by taking different equipments. We would just use our five senses. We would just use our experience to analyze and assess the performance of the particular space. We would use our listening, our seeing, smelling, and the feeling, our experiences and our senses to evaluate the performance of the space. This is called an expert walkthrough analysis. For example, when any construction site is evaluated, um, expert officers are invited to do a walkthrough analysis. And in cases where a particular performance is suspected, for example, if it is suspected that the illumination or the space is a bit too dim, then complex instrumentation analysis takes place, wherein different instruments, for example, lux meter for measuring the brightness or the illumination, noise meter is used to measure the noise levels. Different instrumentation is used in measuring various parameters uh, or for performing analysis and for collecting data to measure the performance of that space. With this, it brings us to an end of the chapter 1, which is an introduction to total building performance. I would encourage you to go to LMS and visit the chapter 1. There is a mind map which gives a summary of all the topics that are covered: introduction to total building performance, limits of acceptability, the various performance mandate, terms of evaluation, the various performance mandates, thermal performance, spatial performance, indoor air quality, acoustical performance, visual performance, and building integrity performance. The various factors which are considered under these performance mandates, then the various human needs and examples of how the human needs can be met, various diagnostic measurement approaches through plan archive analysis, occupancy user analysis, walkthrough analysis, and instrumentation analysis. Example of limit of acceptability is also, you can find it here. You can also refer, after looking at these videos of the online lecture, you can also go to this Kahoot quiz, which is posted here, to understand your learning and to get a gauge of the topics that have been explained in this chapter 1. Right? Thank you and see you soon in class.